Hello, and welcome to your YouTube channel, Learn English Lab. Today's podcast topic name is Living in the USA as a Non-Native Speaker, Real English for Daily American Life.
It is so great to be here for this one.
Yeah, we are really excited to dive into this, so let's just jump right in.
Yeah.
I want you to picture this scenario.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Your heart is just completely racing. It is like 8:45 a.m. on your very first day at some, fast-paced tech firm in Austin.
First day energy, it's intense.
It really is. And the thing is, your grammar is absolutely flawless. I mean, you have a C2 certificate to prove it, right?
You've done all the work.
Exactly. You can read these incredibly dense academic papers. Your emails are just immaculate. But then a colleague you have literally never met in your life hands you a coffee and just goes, "Hey, super excited to have you on the team. How's the commute?"
And panic sets in.
Total panic. Your brain just completely flatlines because suddenly you're not just translating English, you are decoding the sheer, speed of their speech.
Yeah.
You're trying to quickly define the word commute in this specific context. And at the exact same time, you're trying to figure out what the socially appropriate level of enthusiasm is to mirror back to them.
All in the span of about 2 seconds.
Yes. And right in that split second, the whole illusion of your textbook mastery it completely shatters.
It really does. Because you stand there holding this coffee, realizing that knowing English on a theoretical level and actually living it in the reality of an American workplace. I mean, those are two entirely different universes.
Completely different. It's kind of like mastering the engine of a car, right?
I just like that analogy.
Yeah, like, the mechanics, all the fluid levels, the vocabulary, the syntax, the grammar. You built the engine.
But an engine on a desk doesn't get you anywhere.
Exactly. Stepping into that American office is like taking that engine and trying to merge onto this chaotic high-speed highway where everyone else already knows all the unwritten rules of the road.
And the gap between knowing how the engine works and surviving on that highway, that is where so many incredibly talented, highly proficient non-native speakers just get lost.
Yeah, the imposter syndrome really kicks in.
Because the American workplace, it just doesn't operate on textbook English. It runs on this invisible architecture of social rituals, micro-conversations, and totally unwritten codes.
And understanding that architecture is exactly what transforms your basic language proficiency into, true cultural fluency, which is our mission for today's deep dive.
Absolutely.
We are going to take you on a chronological journey through a typical American workday.
From the very beginning.
Right. From the moment you step into the lobby to the team meeting, the lunch break, that really heavy 3 p.m. mental crash.
Oh, we definitely need to talk about the 3 p.m. crash.
We will, for sure. All the way to the subtle politics of how you actually say goodbye and leave the office. We want to unpack the why and the how behind every single one of these interactions.
So you can finally banish that imposter syndrome.
Exactly. So let's start right where the day begins. Section 1, the lobby.
The first 5 minutes of the day.
Why do those first few minutes matter so much?
Because in American work culture, those initial moments are the absolute foundation for professional survival. First impressions happen fast. When you arrive, especially as the new hire, people are going to approach you.
Right.
And the baseline behavior here is something we can call being proactively friendly.
Proactively friendly, which, if we are being completely honest, can feel incredibly jarring.
Very jarring, yes.
Because if you come from a culture that is, a bit more reserved or strictly hierarchical, having someone give you this beaming smile and high energy greeting when they are a total stranger, it just feels like too much.
It can actually come across as insincere, right?
Yeah.
Or even fake.
Yeah, exactly. You think, why is this person acting like my best friend?
It's one of the most common cultural friction points we see. And to really understand it, we have to look at the why behind the behavior. A really helpful framework here is the peach versus coconut cultural model.
Okay, wait. Peach versus coconut.
Yeah, so American culture is generally considered a peach culture.
Like the actual fruit, so soft on the outside.
Soft on the outside, yes. Americans are famously approachable. They'll smile at strangers on the street. They make quick small talk in elevators.
Yeah.
They use your first name immediately.
Right.
That's the soft exterior of the peach. But they still have a hard pit in the center.
Meaning they're truly private lives.
Exactly. Their deepest personal thoughts, their real struggles, they only share that hard pit with a very, very close inner circle.
Okay, so that's the peach. whereas a coconut culture is...
Well, think of countries in, say, Eastern Europe or Germany or parts of East Asia. They are coconuts. They are hard on the outside.
Right, you don't just smile at strangers on the subway in Berlin.
You definitely don't. It takes a long time to build trust and break through that tough exterior. But once you do, once you crack the coconut,
You're inside.
you're inside, and the relationships are incredibly soft, loyal, and deep.
So, okay, if the listener comes from a coconut culture and they meet an American peach in the lobby on their first day,
They misinterpret the soft exterior.
right, they assume that because the American is being so outwardly friendly, they must be offering like deep, genuine friendship.
And then when that deep friendship doesn't immediately materialize, the non-native speaker feels betrayed. Or they just think, wow, Americans are so superficial.
But it's not superficiality.
Not at all. It's the exact misunderstanding. The proactive friendliness is not an offer of deep friendship. It is actually a historical survival mechanism.
Wait, really? Survival?
Yeah. Think about American history. It's a country of constant mobility, westward expansion, people constantly moving to new frontier towns.
Oh, I see.
You had to learn how to establish basic trust with total strangers incredibly fast just to survive and do business. You had to show you weren't a threat.
And that legacy just lives on in the modern office lobby.
Exactly. It's evolved into this rapid rapport building.
That makes so much sense. So when someone swings by your desk at 9 a.m. and says, hey, good morning, how are you settling in? They're really just executing a rapid trust-building ritual.
Linguists actually call this a phatic expression.
Phatic expression.
Right. It's a social lubricant. The whole purpose of the question is not to gather actual data.
So they don't want a detailed status report on my IT issues.
No, they definitely do not want to hear about your computer setup. They're literally just signaling warmth and checking that the social connection between you two is open.
Which means the correct move for the listener is to just mirror that warmth right back.
Keep it light. Keep it positive.
Like, really well, thanks. Everyone has been great.
That's perfect. Or, you can use one of my absolute favorite phrases for a new job, which is still finding my feet, but I am loving it so far.
Oh, finding my feet. I love that one.
It is beautifully natural. It acknowledges that you are in a transition period, that things are maybe a bit overwhelming, but you do it without burdening the listener with any heavy negativity.
Let's ground this a bit with a specific scenario. Let's say we have Priya. She's a data analyst, and she just moved from Hyderabad to Austin.
A big move.
Huge move. And her new boss, Marcus, walks up to her desk, shakes her hand really firmly, and says, Priya, welcome aboard. Let me introduce you to the crew.
Welcome aboard and the crew.
Right. If I am Priya, and I learned my English in a very formal textbook setting, that sounds incredibly casual for a manager to say.
It does sound casual, but that casualness is doing some heavy social work.
How so?
Well, we don't need to dwell too much on the nautical origins of welcome aboard, right? Like joining a ship. But we do need to look at its psychological impact.
Okay.
When Marcus says welcome aboard and calls the team the crew, he is instantly flattening the corporate hierarchy.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about it like that.
Yeah, he is signaling you are a peer in the trenches with us. It removes that strict boss-subordinate dynamic and replaces it with this warm, collaborative, team-centric vibe.
Okay, so then Marcus asks her, so how are you liking Austin so far? And here is the strategic move I want to highlight.
Yes, what did she say?
The best thing Priya can do is not just say, oh, it's fine. She needs to actively compliment the specific city she is in.
Yes.
Like, I am really impressed. The food scene here in Austin is just incredible.
That is the perfect response.
Yeah.
Because civic pride in the U.S. is massive. People love their cities.
Right.
When you validate the specific location they live in, it acts as this amazing shortcut to building rapport. And rapport really is the actual currency of American professional relationships.
But let me push back on this for a second. Let's say Priya is actually having a terrible time.
Okay, well, let's say she is.
Her apartment hunt is a total disaster. The jet lag is awful, and she desperately misses home. If she smiles and says, great, finding my feet, I love the food, isn't she just flat out lying?
I hear this question all the time.
Because in a lot of cultures, masking your true feelings like that is seen as deceitful.
It is a profound difference in cultural values.
Yeah.
But in the U.S., in the specific context of a morning greeting, that is not considered a lie.
What is it considered then?
It is considered a social grace.
A social grace.
Right. The lobby or the quick morning coffee interaction is simply not the culturally designated space for emotional unburdening.
You save that for your friends.
Exactly. You are prioritizing the comfort of the group and the smooth functioning of the office over your own temporary discomfort. It's all about maintaining that positive peach exterior.
So it's not deception, it's just a polite adherence to the social contract.
Precisely.
Okay, so you navigate the lobby, you find your desk, you pass the first test.
And then
You are funneled into the absolute most anxiety-inducing arena of the entire day.
The team meeting.
The meeting matrix, where the unwritten rules become incredibly complex. Let's talk about the preamble banter.
yes, the preamble.
Because you log onto the Zoom call, or you sit down in the physical conference room, and the meeting does not actually start.
Almost never.
For 5, maybe even 10 minutes, people are just talking. They're analyzing the local traffic, they're complaining about the weird weather, or they're just dissecting whatever television show aired last night.
And if you are an international professional who highly values efficiency,
You are sitting there thinking, why are we wasting time? We have an agenda. Let's look at the spreadsheet.
but if you sit there with that mindset, just staring silently at your notes, waiting for it to end, you are sending a very, very negative signal to the room.
Really? Even if I'm just being professional?
Yes, because to an American team, you might come across as aloof or disconnected or even arrogant. That preamble banter is not wasted time. It is a deliberate warm-up mechanism.
I think of it kind of like a jazz performance.
Well, I like that. Explain that.
Well, to an outsider, a jazz performance looks totally chaotic and improvisational, right? People are just playing random notes.
Right, there's no sheet music.
Exactly, but the musicians actually all know the underlying chords. They are taking cues from each other, they are building a rhythm, and that small talk at the beginning of a meeting is essentially the band tuning up and finding their groove before the actual song begins.
That is a brilliant way to look at it.
Yeah.
It humanizes the room. It breaks down those stiff, formal barriers so that when you do talk about the spreadsheet, the collaboration is already flowing.
But here's my question. How do you know when the tuning is over?
The transition.
Because when you are operating in a second language, missing that subtle shift is so easy. Like, you might make a really clever joke about the weather right as the manager is trying to pivot to the painful budget cuts.
Which is super awkward.
Super awkward.
So you have to listen for the transitional discourse markers.
Discourse markers. What do those sound like?
The person leading the meeting will usually signal the shift with a phrase. They'll say something like, all right, looking at the time, we should probably get down to business. Or, well, let's jump into the agenda.
Get down to business.
Yeah, that is the downbeat. The social warm-up is officially over.
Okay, so the meeting begins. And once that professional rhythm takes over, we hit a massive, massive quirk of American business culture.
The cultural duality of directness.
This confuses literally everyone I talk to.
It's fascinating. American business culture tries to do two completely contradictory things at the exact same time.
Right.
On one hand, it values speed, conciseness, and getting straight to the point. Time is money.
But on the other hand,
It places a massive premium on being polite and avoiding any language that could be construed as aggressively confrontational.
so they are trying to split the difference between like extreme Australian bluntness and heavy British indirectness.
Exactly. They aim right for the middle. They wrap their direct criticisms in this thick, protective layer of polite, tentative language.
Let's do a role play scenario to really hear how this sounds in the real world.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's say we are looking at a project timeline on the screen and it is completely unachievable. Like, we are absolutely going to fail if we keep this schedule.
Okay, high stakes.
If I am from a very direct culture, say the Netherlands or maybe Israel, I might just look at it and say, this timeline is wrong, we need to change it or we will fail.
Which is very clear. But to American ears, that sounds incredibly aggressive and hostile.
It shuts down the whole room.
It does. People will get defensive.
So how does the American manager say the exact same thing without causing a scene?
The American manager will use softening language. They might say something like, I am looking at this schedule, and I think we might want to reconsider the timeline here. I am just a little concerned we might be stretching ourselves too thin.
Okay, let's freeze the tape right there because this is vital.
Break it down.
We might want to reconsider. And I am just a little concerned if I am translating that literally in my head back into my native language.
This sounds like a mild suggestion.
Exactly. It sounds like, hey, if we have some extra time later, maybe we could look at this. But honestly, it's not a big deal.
And that is the trap.
It's a huge trap.
Might want to reconsider. Is actually American corporate code for this is fundamentally broken and we absolutely must change it immediately.
That is just a staggering disconnect between the literal words and the intended meaning.
It is. But the American manager is trying to preserve your dignity in front of the group. They are giving you the opportunity to willingly agree that the timeline needs changing, rather than forcefully telling you that you were wrong.
So reading between those polite lines is an absolute survival skill.
100%. You have to tune your ear to words like might, perhaps, a little bit, and reconsider. In an American meeting, those tiny words usually carry heavy, non-negotiable weight.
Okay, so I am sitting in this meeting, I am decoding the small talk, I am translating might want to reconsider into this is an emergency. The cognitive load is just building.
The pressure is on.
And the pressure to speak up starts mounting. You start feeling like if you're going to open your mouth, you need to deliver this flawless, grammatically perfect monologue just to prove your worth.
We really need to dismantle that myth right now.
Please do.
You do not need to deliver perfect speeches.
Yeah.
Americans do not value long monologues in meetings. They value engagement.
So what is the best way to show engagement if you are terrified of making a mistake in a long explanation?
You ask questions.
Just ask a question.
Yes, there is a deeply ingrained misconception among a lot of international professionals that asking questions makes you look weak or ignorant or unprepared.
Right, because in many educational systems globally, you are supposed to just sit there, listen, and absorb the knowledge from the authority figure. Asking a question means you weren't paying attention.
But in the American workplace, asking a targeted, smart question is viewed as an intellectual flex.
An intellectual flex.
Yes, it is a sign of engagement and confidence.
Give me some phrases. What does a smart question sound like?
You might use a phrase like, "Could you walk me through the rationale behind that?"
Walk me through the rationale.
Or, "I want to make sure we are on the same page. Are we saying the Q3 deadline is flexible?"
Those sound incredibly polished. On the same page.
They do two things simultaneously. They clarify the actual information you need to do your job, and they demonstrate to the room that you are actively processing the material, not just passively taking notes.
But wait, what if it is a genuinely basic question? Like, what if they used an acronym you simply do not know, or they referenced a past project you weren't even here for?
Then you leverage humility as a tool.
Humility.
You preface your question by saying something like, "This might be a basic question, but I want to make sure I understand correctly."
I don't know, that feels so vulnerable. Announcing to your team that your question is basic.
It is vulnerable, but it signals a highly respected form of conscientiousness. It tells the room, look, I care more about getting the work right than I do about protecting my ego.
And American work culture really respects that.
Enormously. Sitting in silence, pretending to understand everything, and then messing up the project 3 weeks later. That is the worst possible outcome.
So the question itself is your active contribution to the meeting.
Exactly.
Okay. So you survived the lobby, you decoded the jazz warm-up of the meeting matrix, you asked a brilliant clarifying question.
You're doing great.
You look at the clock, and it is finally noon. You think, thank goodness a break. I can finally turn my English brain off.
Ah, but lunch is not a break, is it?
Not at all. It is just a completely different kind of conversational test.
The lunchtime minefield.
Yes, section 3. The lunchtime minefield. Because in many cultures, lunch is just purely biological. You eat your food, you read a book, you recharge your batteries in silence.
But in America, lunch, especially in your first few months on a new job, is this informal social arena where office dynamics are navigated and your professional reputation is solidified.
Let's start with the invitation itself, the tag-along culture.
Oh, the tag-along.
You are sitting at your desk, trying to decompress, and a colleague walks by and says, hey, a few of us are heading to that new taco place down the street. I want to tag along.
Tag along is a phrase that sounds so unbelievably casual, it almost feels optional. Like they barely even care if you come or not.
But it is definitely not optional.
In your first few weeks. It is absolutely mandatory.
Why is it mandatory?
Because that casual invitation is actually an olive branch. It is the team actively trying to weave you into their social fabric. They're saying, we want to see who you are outside of the meeting matrix.
So if you decline because, you want to keep working to prove you are a hard worker, or you just feel shy about your English.
You risk isolating yourself completely. You become the outsider.
Okay, so you say, sure, I'd love to. And you go to the taco place, you sit down with your tacos, and then you encounter the fluidity of American conversational topics.
This whiplash effect can be so dizzying.
Whiplash is the right word. Because 1 minute, someone is stressing over a massive project deadline, right? And literally in the next breath, they turn to you and ask about your weekend plans, or they start detailing some random hiking trail they just discovered.
It jumps from heavy work to casual life instantly.
Why do they blur the lines like that? Why not just keep work topics at work and personal topics personal?
Because, again, American culture places a premium on authentic personal connection in the workplace. They really want to feel like they're working with a whole human being, not just a corporate drone who processes data.
This fluidity reflects their desire to blend the professional and personal.
Right, into a cohesive relationship.
But that creates a massive tightrope walk for the non-native speaker, because you have to show them who you are, but you cannot show them too much of who you are.
Exactly. You have to navigate the safe zones versus the heavy lifting.
Let's categorize those. What are the safe zones?
Safe zones are universally relatable and generally upbeat. So, hobbies, the neighborhood you just moved to, food, travel, books, movies.
Topics that let your personality shine without triggering any conflict?
Yes. Keep it light.
And the heavy lifting. The danger zones we need to avoid.
Especially early on, you must completely avoid politics, avoid religion, avoid detailed discussions of personal finances or salary.
Oh, definitely.
And, crucially, avoid complaining heavily about the company or the management.
Wait, even if all your colleagues are sitting there complaining about the boss?
Even then, joining in too early can backfire terribly. You simply do not have the social capital yet to be a critic. You don't know who is friends with who.
That is such good advice. But let me throw a scenario at you.
Let's hear it.
You are at lunch. You are trying to stick to the safe zones. But someone turns to you and asks a highly inappropriate, very polarized political question.
It happens.
Maybe they ask about a controversial election in your home country or some sensitive foreign policy issue. You are totally backed into a corner. How do you escape that without killing the friendly mood of the lunch?
You have to use what I like to call conversational Aikido.
Conversational Aikido. Using their momentum to deflect.
Exactly. You deflect with warmth. You do not want to give a tense, defensive refusal like, I prefer not to discuss politics at work.
Because that makes everyone feel scolded and uncomfortable.
Right. It kills the peach vibe. You want to acknowledge the weight of the question and then immediately pivot back to a safe zone.
What does that actually sound like in practice? Give me a script.
Okay, you might smile, take a breath, and say something like, oh, wow, yeah, that is a really complex issue back home. It is a lot to unpack. But speaking of complicated things, have you tried navigating that new farmer's market on 5th Street? I got completely lost there on Sunday.
That is fantastic. You smiled, you acknowledged the topic was deep, a lot to unpack, and you immediately threw the ball back to them with a safe, local, engaging question.
You changed the subject without making the other person feel embarrassed for asking.
It is the absolute art of keeping things light. Mastering that graceful deflection will save the listener from so many awkward situations.
It is a lifesaver.
So, you survive the lunch, you do the conversational Aikido, you get back to your desk.
Still alive.
Still alive, but it is now about 3:00 p.m. You open an email, and suddenly, the English words are just swimming on the screen.
Oh, no.
You are staring at your desk, and you literally cannot remember the English word for stapler. The fluency that you had at 9 VRM has just completely vanished.
You have hit the wall. Section 4. The Invisible Marathon.
You feel like your English is actively regressing in real time.
We really need to validate this lived experience for the listeners because it is so rarely talked about in language classes. If this happens to you, please know your English is not deteriorating.
You are not failing.
You are not failing. You are experiencing a documented psychological and physiological phenomenon known as cognitive load.
Let's look at the actual science of this. Why is cognitive load so incredibly heavy for a non-native speaker?
Because operating in a second language, especially in a high-stakes professional environment, it taxes your working memory and your prefrontal cortex in ways that native speakers simply cannot fathom.
There is a concept in linguistics called L1 interference, right?
Yes, L1 interference. Your brain is constantly, subconsciously fighting the urge to process information in your native language, your L1.
So your prefrontal cortex is basically working overtime just to suppress your native language while simultaneously generating English.
Exactly. And you are not just generating vocabulary. Think of your brain like a smartphone.
Okay, a smartphone.
You are running 10 heavy applications in the background simultaneously.
Let's list those apps.
You are translating complex concepts. You are actively monitoring your pronunciation. You are scanning the other person's facial expressions to ensure they aren't confused.
Right.
You are rapidly choosing between prepositions in real time, like is it in the meeting, at the meeting, or on the meeting.
And every single one of those microscopic decisions drains the battery just a little bit more.
And by mid-afternoon, that battery is empty. The cognitive resources required to maintain that friendly peach exterior, to navigate the meeting matrix, and to suppress the L1 interference, they simply run out.
You start zoning out.
Your grammar slips.
Yeah.
You forget the word for stapler. This is the invisible marathon of the bilingual professional.
Honestly, just knowing that there is a scientific reason for this is a huge relief. But how do we actually manage it? Because unfortunately, the workday does not end at 3 p.m.
No, it doesn't. So the most successful international professionals practice strategic energy management.
Strategic energy management.
First, you have to structure your day around your cognitive battery. If you have a highly demanding linguistic task, like presenting a complex report or negotiating a contract with a client, do everything in your power to schedule it for the morning.
Do the heavy lifting when you actually have the strength.
Precisely.
And when you inevitably hit the 3 p.m. wall,
give yourself a genuine cognitive break. Step away from the screen for 5 minutes.
I'll get some water.
Right. And critically, do not listen to an English podcast or read an English news article during that break.
Oh, give the language centers a rest.
Let them rest. You might even listen to a few minutes of music in your native language just to reset your brain.
And what about the pressure to be perfect?
You have to drop the perfectionism. That is the most important step. You have to abandon the impossible standard of flawless execution late in the day.
Just accept it.
Except that by 4 p.m., you might use the wrong verb tense. You might have to pause for 3 seconds to search for a word. That is okay.
Because the goal of communication is effective connection, not a flawless grammatical performance.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the end of the day, section 5.
Clocking out.
Because that massive cognitive drain doesn't just magically disappear at 5 p.m. In fact, being tired makes the end-of-day exit a particularly dangerous time for a cultural misstep.
Your brain is simply too exhausted to filter your behavior anymore.
Right. The subtle politics of clocking out. Let's talk about the rituals at the end of the day.
They definitely have their own distinct vocabulary.
Like you will constantly hear the phrase, all right, I'm calling it a day.
Calling it a day. It is a highly satisfying idiom, isn't it?
It is.
It implies this conscious decision that the work is sufficient, the effort was made, and now it is officially time to transition to personal time.
And then, of course, the universal American farewell.
Have a good one.
A big one.
It is so ubiquitous, it almost loses its meaning completely.
It really does. It's just a shortened, reflexive version of have a good evening or have a good day. And the appropriate response is just as relaxed. You too. See you tomorrow.
But, the vocabulary isn't the hard part here.
No, it's not.
The hard part is the behavioral tension, specifically the tension around leaving first.
Ah, presenteeism. Yes. In many high-pressure American industries, we're talking tech, finance, consulting, law, there is a massive disconnect between what the company preaches and what it actually practices.
They will preach work-life balance in all the HR onboarding seminars.
But the unspoken reality is often a culture of presenteeism. If you are consistently the very first person out the door at 5:00 p.m. sharp, colleagues might unconsciously judge your work ethic. Wait. If my team stays and works until 8 p.m. every night because they have absolutely no life outside the office, mirroring them just to fit in sounds like a fast track to extreme burnout.
It is.
So where do we draw the line between adapting to the culture and being exploited by it?
That is probably the most difficult line to walk in your career. The goal is not to become a victim of a toxic culture, but to manage perceptions strategically early on.
Manage perceptions.
Yes. During your first few weeks, the best advice is to establish a baseline of solidarity. Mirror your immediate team. If they usually wrap up at 5:30, you wrap up at 5:30.
You prove you are a reliable part of the crew.
Correct. But if the culture is a grueling 8 p.m. culture, you definitely do not have to trap yourself in that long term. However, when you do decide to leave at a reasonable hour, the key is the execution of your exit.
Okay, so it needs to be done with quiet assurance. What does a quiet assurance exit look like?
It means no sneaking and no guilt trips.
No sneaking.
Do not slink out the back door hoping no one sees you leave. That is called ghosting the office, and it comes across as standoffish and weird.
Right.
But conversely, do not over-explain. Do not stand up and give a nervous, rambling 5-minute speech about how you really need to go to the grocery store because you have no food, but you'll definitely be checking emails on your phone.
Oh, because apologizing for leaving makes it look like you are doing something wrong.
Exactly. It makes you look guilty. You need to leave like someone who has put in a highly productive day and is proud of it.
So just keep it clean.
You stand up, pack your bag calmly, say, "All right, team, I'm calling it a day. Have a good one."
Oh.
And you walk out the door. That clean, friendly, low ceremony exit actually commands respect, even if others are staying late.
I love that. Okay, we have walked through the entire chronology of the day. Now let's build the blueprint, section 6. Let's give the listener the concrete, actionable toolkit they can start using tomorrow to master this invisible architecture.
The first, and arguably most powerful tool, is creating a personal phrase bank.
A phrase bank.
You need to transition from studying generic textbooks to actively capturing the highly specific local dialect of your office.
Because every company, and even every specific team, has its own unique linguistic quirks.
Yes. When your manager says, "Let's circle back on that after lunch," do not just nod your head, right? Circle back down in a notebook.
Oh, right.
When a colleague says, "I want to flag this issue before we proceed," flag this issue. When someone in a meeting says, "Let me piggyback off what Sarah just said," add piggyback off to your bank.
And just to clarify, piggyback off just means to build upon someone else's idea, right?
Exactly. The crucial next step, though, is to proactively force yourself to use those exact phrases in your own sentences the very next day.
Why is that so important?
Because the fastest way to build deep subconscious rapport in any environment is to adopt the linguistic patterns of the people in that environment. When you use their phrases, it signals belonging. It subconsciously tells them, "I am one of you."
It's mirroring, but with vocabulary.
Precisely.
Tool number 2 is an absolute game changer for those unpredictable small talk moments we talked about. The 3-sentence response framework.
This is an incredibly potent conversational tool for casual questions that usually catch you off guard. It is a simple, repeatable formula.
Walk us through the formula.
Sentence 1, direct answer. Sentence 2, a small, safe personal detail. Sentence 3, a redirect or invitation for them to share.
Okay, let's demonstrate this live.
Yeah.
I will be your colleague. We are waiting for the elevator on a Monday morning. I ask, "Hey, how was your weekend?"
Okay, if I don't use the framework, I might just panic and say, "It was good, thanks."
Which totally kills the conversation.
It does. But with the framework, I say, "It was really nice, thanks." That's the direct answer.
Okay.
I actually finally checked out that new art exhibit downtown. That's the personal detail.
Nice.
Have you been to that gallery yet? And that's the redirect.
It is brilliant. It takes, what, maybe 10 seconds? But look at the social work it accomplishes. You proved fluency. You offered a piece of your soft peach exterior to build connection. And you showed reciprocity by asking about me.
And the best part is, you can pre-build these.
Yeah.
You know, people will eventually ask, "How are you settling in?" Or "What did you do this weekend?" Draft your 3-sentence responses in advance on Sunday night so you never freeze up on Monday.
Tool number 3 is about becoming a student of the culture, watching the behavior, not just listening to the vocabulary.
You really need to observe how your American colleagues navigate tricky emotional terrain. Notice how they deliver criticism.
Yes. In America, criticism is almost always delivered via the feedback sandwich,
The famous feedback sandwich.
where you hide the negative critique between 2 really thick slices of compliments. Like, "Priya, you are such a great addition to the team, but your data analysis in this report is completely wrong. Keep up the good work."
It feels so dizzying if you come from a direct culture.
It does. You walk away wondering, did I just get fired or promoted?
But if you study it, you learn that the compliments are just the padding, and the middle part is the only thing you actually need to act on.
So you have to watch for it. Notice how they use self-deprecating humor to diffuse tense situations. Watch their body language when they are signaling skepticism.
And the best homework for this is actually watching American TV shows set in offices.
But you have to watch them differently, right?
Yes, watch them for the conversational patterns, not the plot. Listen to the rhythm of the banter. Pay attention to how people interrupt each other politely.
And as you listen to those patterns, you're going to discover the final and perhaps most advanced tool in our blueprint.
The magic of discourse markers.
Discourse markers. These are those little words that just pepper native speech. Words like, actually, honestly, basically, right?
Grammar purists often dismiss these as useless filler words.
They tell you to cut them out.
But in spoken communication, they are the mortar between the bricks. They do heavy social work.
Let's show, not just tell. Give me an example.
If I say to you, I think we should change the design. It sounds a bit abrupt, a bit rigid.
Right.
But if I use a discourse marker and say, actually, I was thinking we should change the design, the entire tone shifts.
It really does. It softens the statement. It makes it feel conversational rather than dictatorial.
It signals that I am reflecting on the conversation in real time. Or take the word honestly.
Okay, honestly.
If I say, honestly, that meeting was pretty overwhelming, putting honestly at the front instantly creates this sense of candor. It invites the listener into my confidence. It builds immediate trust.
But let me ask the hard question here, because I know people are thinking it.
Ask away.
If I am meticulously documenting my colleagues' phrases in a notebook, if I am mathematically constructing 3-sentence responses in my head before I talk to someone, and if I am strategically dropping the word honestly just because I studied it, isn't that just faking it?
It's a totally valid fear.
Because how do we stay authentic to who we actually are while putting on this elaborate linguistic costume?
We need to fundamentally reframe what fluency actually is. Fluency is adaptation.
Adaptation.
Think about how you speak in your native language right now. You speak differently to your grandmother than you do to your closest friend.
Right, of course.
And you speak differently again to a police officer or to your boss. You naturally adapt your tone, your vocabulary, and your body language to the environment you are in.
And I am not faking a new personality in those situations. I am just presenting different facets of myself.
Exactly. Adopting the local workplace dialect in English, using discourse markers, understanding the peach culture, none of this is faking it. It is simply acquiring the necessary tools to let your true, intelligent, authentic self be understood in a brand new environment.
It feels like putting on a costume at first, but with practice.
It just becomes a comfortable suit.
Fluency is adaptation. That is the perfect way to look at it. Okay, let's take a breath and recap the massive journey we have been on today.
It's been a big day.
We started by decoding the peach culture of the lobby, understanding that proactive friendliness is really a historical tool for rapid trust building.
Then we navigated the complex matrix of the team meeting, learning how small talk is the jazz warm-up, and how to decode the uniquely American duality of directness wrapped in politeness.
We survived the lunchtime minefield, understanding that the casual tag-along invitation is a crucial olive branch, and we practiced the conversational aikido of deflecting heavy topics with warmth.
We validated the brutal reality of the 3 p.m. wall, exploring how L1 interference and cognitive load literally, physically drain the brain.
And we discussed strategies for managing that energy. And finally, we explored the subtle politics of the theater exit, calling it a day with quiet confidence.
And we built a blueprint. The phrase banks, the 3-sentence responses, the cultural observation, and the discourse markers.
But beneath all of these tactics, there is a fundamental truth that we need to reinforce for the listener.
What is that truth?
That gap we talked about at the very beginning, that frustrating, disorienting space between the highly sophisticated, brilliant thoughts in your head and the sometimes simplified English that actually comes out of your mouth.
Yes.
That gap is not a flaw. It is not a sign of failure. It is the frontier. It is the exact place where growth is happening.
Operating at an advanced level in a second language, in a high-stakes professional environment, while simultaneously decoding a complex foreign culture.
It's incredible.
It is a monumental achievement. It is a remarkable display of cognitive endurance, adaptability, and professional dedication. And it is something that should never, ever be minimized, not by your colleagues, and especially not by yourself.
That brings us right back to where we started. Remember that moment in the lobby? Your flawless grammar didn't save you from the freeze, so I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over.
I love a final thought.
We spend years in classrooms obsessing over textbook perfection. We chase flawless grammar. We memorize vocabulary lists. But what if the ultimate goal of learning a language isn't actually to achieve perfect grammar?
What is it then?
What if the true goal is to achieve perfect, fearless connection with the people around you?
Because that connection,
that
is the real fluency.
Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.